Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Red video we're going to be discussing NVIDIA's CES 2017 conference. This video probably isn't going to be as long as I'd initially thought it was when I was planning on making it last night, because there was one product, actually numerous products, which were conspicuous with their absence. So before we talk about what was there, let's talk about what wasn't there. And that is, of course, the GTX 1080 Ti. Now it's quite interesting because numerous leakers have confirmed the existence of this card, and I won't go into the specifications of it because, frankly, we don't know enough to really say much other than it's supposedly got 10 gigabytes of RAM. It's based on the Pascal Titan X core, supposedly, and naturally it will be aimed at filling both the price and performance gap between the 1080 and the Titan. But it wasn't announced, and I think NVIDIA's conference really left a bit of disappointment in the mouths of many people. And the question is, why didn't they do that? Well, obviously at the end of the day, I don't know exactly, but the rumours were that they were going to announce the card. So there's one of two things. One, the card either doesn't exist or they weren't confident enough to show it on stage. Or the more likely scenario, in my opinion anyway, is that they are wondering what AMD have got in store for them. So basically what I have a feeling is that they're not quite sure what levels of performance they need to hit with the Titan. So this could be anything from clock speed down to pricing. I'm sorry, I realised I just said the Titan, I meant the Ti. They're just not sure what levels of pricing or clock speeds they need to hit, or perhaps even a last minute bump in the number of CUDA cores for the GPU. The fact that it wasn't shown off definitely was rather disappointing for many individuals, but I guess from NVIDIA's perspective it's better to play the cards close to their chest, and they can, let's face it, always have their own live stream in a couple of weeks' time when they've had chance to, I guess, regroup and make a decision. So there is a lot of information regarding AMD's Vega architecture, and quite frankly I'm tempted to put out a video because a couple of hours before their live stream a whole bunch of information's leaked out, but I'm not going to do that because quite frankly it will be rendered pointless by the time, you know, tomorrow rolls around with all of the official information from AMD. So I figure it's better just to wait, in case anyone's wondering why I'm not including some of the Vega stuff earlier today. But let's talk about what NVIDIA have announced. So there are a couple of interesting pieces, the first of which are HDR enabled G-Sync monitors. And there are a couple of 4K 144Hz monitors which will be available by the second quarter of 2017. Now, just like AMD's FreeSync 2, come on, you didn't expect one company to have one technology without the other one to do very similar. Basically, the idea behind these technologies is that you will have much lower latency while putting out HDR images, and naturally that also means that you're going to have HDR10 support, as well as all of the other bits and pieces that you would expect from a 4K display, which is G-Sync enabled. So once again, very low latency, high refresh rate, and theoretically this should give you the best of both worlds. It should give you a lovely HDR image, which is, you know, high resolution, high fidelity, but you shouldn't get the latency which you would associate with a lot of 4K televisions. If you've ever tried playing on a television, especially an older model 4K, and even HDR ones, there can be a lot of latency, especially if you're used to like Twitch first-person shooters. And obviously one way to get around that somewhat is to disable VSync, but then you've got a lot of tearing, and some games don't deal with tearing so badly, but other game engines really look ugly when they're tearing. So anyway, I don't think I need to go through too much of what G-Sync is, but I guess the big one for most folks who are gaming orientated is NVIDIA's streaming service known as GeForce Now. So what is it? Well, essentially it's cloud-based streaming. NVIDIA are touting this, that you get access to a GTX 1080 in the cloud. basically, you get to play PC games over a network. I believe the minimum connection is 25 megabytes per second, which shouldn't be too awful for the majority of folks unless you've got a really bad Wi-Fi connection. You can load the GeForce Now app, then you install whatever game you want, for example, a Steam game, and then you are doing this on a virtual machine, and once it's loaded, you can enjoy the game at the higher graphical fidelity settings, or higher resolution, whatever you want to do, and then it's streamed to your PC or Macintosh. It sounds great in theory, but the one problem with it, as a lot of people have pointed out, is the pricing, which is kind of brutal. And that is $25 for 20 hours of gameplay. So it's not like 25 bucks or 30 bucks a month. It's actually $25 for 20 hours of gameplay. And if you think about that, if you are someone who does a lot of gaming, that can really be a cost which accrues pretty quickly. I mean, just think about that. Just if you're playing even 200 hours over a couple of months, which isn't inconceivable over like Christmas periods or whatever, that's a lot of money. And quite frankly, I can see the appeal for this for some people, but I can also definitely see the idea of just thinking, screw it, I'm going to buy a lower performance card. And quite frankly, to be honest, at this point, I understand the ability to stream because it can be kind of nice, but it also depends on latency, and Twitch-based shooters don't necessarily have the best for latency. On the other hand, it could work quite nicely for something like Fallout 4, but also think of how many hours that you would need to put in to something like Dark Souls or Fallout 4 or, well, you know, World of Warcraft. Think of how many hours would be eaten up. I mean, I know so many people have gone like 100 hours or 200 hours in something like The Witcher or Fallout. Even Rise of the Tomb Raider was about 20 to 25 hours. So just paying the streaming alone, you're looking at like 25 bucks just to complete Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, which is kind of expensive. And quite frankly, I can imagine a lot of people would rather just buy a lower end card, which isn't, you know, impossible. You could buy like a pretty decent Kaby Lake i3, which overclocks really well. It's about as fast as previous generation quad cores. I'm saying i3 because we don't know the price, at least I'm recording this, of Summit Ridge / the Ryzen platform. And then you could buy a graphics card like, for example, the RX 470 or the 480 or a GTX 1060, and they're not prohibitively expensive anymore. Or you could even buy a used card, for example, an R9 290, a 290X, a GTX 980. They're doing pretty well on eBay at the moment. You could get a nice card and certainly have a decent level of performance at your home. And even if you decided to go with an older generation CPU, I mean, for example, you could hit the bargain bins right now, go to eBay. I know I keep using eBay as an example, but you could go Craigslist, whatever you wanted, or, you know, hit up your friend Bob who's doing an upgrade. Get DDR3 memory, which is basically cheapest chips at the moment. Fetch yourself a nice, I don't know, 4770K, or even a 2500K if you're looking for a pretty cheap basic machine. They're very cheap at the moment, and then Bob's your uncle. So I'm not saying that this is a poor service, I'm just saying that it's quite expensive, especially considering there are numerous competitors, which I won't go into in this video, which also offer online game streaming. There are a couple of other bits and pieces NVIDIA did discuss, for example, artificial intelligence, as well as self-driving cars. They believe by 2020 they're going to have self-driving cars on the market, which could be kind of cool. I'm not going to spend too long on that, however, in this very video, because I think the majority of people who are watching this channel, or especially this video, because of obviously the excitement regarding the GTX 1080 Ti, which obviously hasn't happened, probably aren't super interested in that. If there is some interest, you can always email, message me, or what have you, and I can put something out regarding that if I've got some time. But that's about it for this video. So hopefully you found it interesting. As I said, I think the one that we're all looking forward to at this particular moment is AMD's, which, as of the time I'm recording this, is happening in about 5-ish hours, I believe. So that's going to be, or it might be 6 hours, I'm not sure, but it's happening quite soon. And it's going to be a very cool conference. we're already starting to see leaks showing Ryzen and Vega and various benchmarks and games running on their hardware. At the end of the day, however, we do know it's got a different architecture, but what I want to know from AMD themselves, what is the pricing, what is the release date, what is the performance, what are they targeting, and I guess also what's going to happen with the previous generation of cards. I think all of us want to know, if you don't have like $700 to spend, what can you get for like the same price of a GTX 1070, just for example? And I think that would be, I think for them to answer that and the 1080 pricing, that would be pretty amazing. So if they have a card that's around the 300 to 400 mark, and they have a card which is like the 500 to 700 mark, you know, different obviously tiers, that would be pretty awesome. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.